What's up guys, welcome back indeed for more Path of Exile. So in this video there's going to be a lot of information that's kind of rapid fire, but I wanted the guide to be able to continue on in terms of our pieces of gear at the start of this video so you guys can kind of see what you're trying to look for in pieces of gear. Ideally you just keep on slamming out more maps. You can see right now we are level 86. Just keep on doing more maps and eventually you'll start to see that over on your Atlas you will be able to get a lot of these maps completed. And as you progress into the yellow maps, they're going to have to be rare to be able to get the bonus. And eventually, once they are in the red, you're going to have to do a rare map that is also corrupted, which requires you to use something called a Vol Orb on the map. For example, this one over here, I have not done the bonus. So I would have to convert the item to a rare item and make sure that there isn't any mods that would destroy us. Specifically, Reflect Elemental Damage would absolutely destroy us. But I can also take this Vol Orb, and this is how I corrupt it. Now, when I corrupt it, it's going to make it so I can't change the map. You can see right now, it is corrupted. So if I want to change it, use a Chaos Orb to change the things, I can't because it's corrupted. So it makes it a little bit more risky to corrupt the item because it's basically something that you cannot modify. There are some items that you can modify while they are corrupted by using benchcrafts and other methods, but for the most part, this map is essentially useless to us because, well, it's got Reflect Elemental Damage, which is the one thing that I just mentioned. So, all your whole goal is in the end game of Path of Exile is to keep on slamming out maps, and then you'll eventually get these different little stones that you can throw in here, and you're going to get access to the Maven. I'll kind of go over some small little rapid fire clips in this video, but what you definitely want to try to do is get upgrades on your pieces of gear. The most important thing I want to go ahead and show you guys, two of the most important things towards the end game. So for our build, we are using a weapon, and it's going to be primarily our source of damage. So just to show you guys kind of what you want to look for is you want something that does not have, if I was to use the Path of Exile trade website, I'm going to type in the word chaos damage. So I don't want it to add any chaos damage to attacks. I'm going to go to item category. I'm going to go ahead and type in the bow, and then I'm going to go to and hit search. And I want the highest amount of DPS that the bow does. Now I don't have 25 divine orbs because we're kind of in I would say a budget here. And every single piece of gear that you're seeing in the current moment here is 20 or under. I think I maybe paid like 20 chaos orbs for my bow. But you can see what you're trying to look for is something like this. This would be a really great bow to acquire. So anything that gives you like high DPS is what you're looking for. Later, you can start getting into crit and you can start looking for the best stats, but right now, you're not looking for anything insane. And like, if you don't happen to have this amount of budget, like you don't have enough Chaos Orbs, you can technically craft, but ideally for a new player, it's unrealistically that you're going to be able to craft something very good. We'll get more into crafting later, and like I'll show you guys how to craft some of the really strong items, but let's say maybe you only have 10 Chaos Orbs. The difference between a 10 and a 20, I mean, it was like 30 DPS, so like it's totally fine if you only have 10 Chaos Orbs. Just get something. Much better. That's one of the more important things. Another very important thing that you really want to try to do is get a 6 link. We are playing evasion based, so let's just look for something that has at least like, let's say 500 evasion, and it has 6 links in it. So we're looking for a body armor. We can also type this in body armor over here, and most of these will be corrupted. And let's say we only have, let's say, 10 Chaos Orbs, okay? A lot of stuff that I bought was 10 and under, but I think I spent 20 on my bow. But nonetheless, all you're looking for is, again, just something that is 6 link that fits your build. So our build, in our case, we usually want a lot of green. A lot of these will be corrupted. That usually means you cannot modify it. But as long as it's 6 link, it's going to be a massive increase in our DPS. So here's what I have in terms of our skills. But yeah, ideally you want to try to get life and resistances on every single piece of gear. If I go into my character's defenses over here, we ideally want to have maxed out on all of the resistances except for chaos. Chaos we can get later on. It's just something that early on the items get very, very expensive if you want to try to get chaos resistance plus life and regular resistances, because it's just kind of a sought after. But eventually, as time goes on, these items will get cheaper because people want to upgrade their gear and the prices kind of just all shift down. So ideally you just try to get as much damage as you possibly can get on your bow. If you could get a 6-link bow, that'd be great, but trying to get a 6-link bow that has really high stats in terms of everything else, it's going to cost you probably a little bit more than 10 or 20 Chaos Orbs. But I'll just mouse over the pieces of gear so you guys can get kind of idea what I'm trying to shoot for. You'll see time and time again, most pieces of gear will have resistances in life, and that's kind of what you're looking for on most pieces of your gear. There isn't anything super special with anything that we got. This was just really cheap. You can get a Blizzard Crown, which just adds elemental damage, cold in our case, and it's going to treat the resistances 10 higher than the actual value. But if they have negative, this is going to be even better, which later we can spec into iShot and get a lot of negative cold resistance applied to the enemy. But yeah, I'll just mouse over the pieces of gear. I mean, most of this stuff is pretty bad. You know, at this point, we can definitely get some upgrades, but I just wanted to at least give you guys something to look at. We'll also go over crafting the flasks in a moment here, but in terms of the skill gems, here's what I'm currently running. We could definitely change this up. I'm running elemental damage with attacks, Mirage Archer, Lightning Arrow, added lightning damage support, returning projectiles, and lightning penetration. Before, I think a long time ago, we were running added cold damage. It's just because in the very earlier stages of the game, it's totally fine to run like a lot of weird stuff just because it's like, well, it's the colors that your armor happens to have and you can just socket anything in there. But towards the end game, you notice that your DPS starts to slack as you progress higher and higher in the map tier. I'm also, I'll just mouse over the gems. I'll also have down below the poe.ninja, which is the website that will have like all the builds. So if I'm going too fast by any means, you can definitely use that. I'm also adding a setup here where we have 3 reds linked. I'm running Steel Skin. I want this specifically at level 10, and I want cast when damage taken support, as well as increased duration, so it makes it last a little bit longer. So the reason why I want this a lower level is I just want this to basically remove bleed from us. It also can take some amount of damage, but it's on automatic cast, so I don't have to cast it anymore. I've also added Blood Rage, and when I activate this, it drains our HP, but we get to get life leeched. We already have life leech in the build, but it just gives us additional life leech. We don't hit particularly hard for physical, but it's going to be totally okay. It's basically free attack speed, and right now it's only level 1 here. And then I'm also running Tornado and Hydrosphere. This is optional, but I'll cut to a clip of kind of how I'm using it. Basically, when you see a boss, you can throw in both of these, and your arrows will actually hit the Hydrosphere and then can chain off the boss, and this will also apply something that is called exposure, and exposure is going to apply negative resistances to those enemies, so we can do even more damage. Alright, so this is how we use Hydrosphere. We throw Hydrosphere and we throw Tornado, and we just shoot, and it's just going to be bouncing off both the Hydrosphere and the Tornado when the boss comes back. And no eliminating them quite fast. It's optional, but I like it. It adds exposure as I don't have a source right now, but eventually we will be able to just get exposure on it. And also lets the arrow bounce from the Hydrosphere to the enemy, and that just increases your DPS. It has a 1 second cooldown in between. You can't just have a bunch of arrows come out. You used to be able to, they nerfed it though, but it's still pretty good. But Tornado is basically kind of the same thing, but this one doesn't have a limit on every duration. This one is only once every second. Yeah, it can only be hit once every second is where Hydrosphere got kind of nerfed, but it's still good. But there's going to be a lot of just tips in the next section of this video, because Path of Exile is a game where there's just so much content to go ahead and consume. There's different like things that you can do on your Atlas, and there's a lot of different things that you can do in the game where it's kind of up to you on the mechanics that you want to engage with. But the main important thing is just try to clear all of your maps, and eventually you will get these invitations. These invitations will open up more bosses, and you're going to get these watchstones that can increase the level or the tier of the maps that you'll be getting, which we'll cover in the next part. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of content, and make sure that you watch all of this video, because it's very, very important, because I'll go over how to do flasks and how to get immunity freeze. There's just a lot of intricate things that are required for you to actually progress in the game. But in terms of like gameplay, I can't really walk you through all the maps, because it's not only kind of pointless because you just go to the end and kill the boss. There are some maps that may have some sort of gimmick, and I plan to eventually make a video that goes over how to do some of the maps that do have like some sort of weird mechanic that's not super straightforward. But most of the maps that are on the requirements to actually complete, it's just like you just kill the boss that is rare or a higher version of the map. But eventually there's going to be some more bosses, and we'll cover those. But let's cut to some of the things that I want to teach you guys in this game. So let's talk about how to get the freeze immunity with our Pantheon. So this time we have to do waterways. Sometimes this changes. It used to be capture a certain boss, and this will change. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to get a divine vessel. So this is what they look like. You can get these as a drop, and they're not super rare, but if you don't have one, you can purchase these. So these two things over here are going to be required. So you can buy the waterways map, or if you just get it as a drop, This is about like 2 chaos. And then this over here is, looks like 4 chaos. So if you want to be immune to freeze, which I highly recommend eventually getting at some point in the game, you're going to take your waterways map, and you're also going to take your divine vessel and put it in. You can still make the map harder, but let's see if we get something that's like reasonable, because sometimes making the boss hard on top of making it hard, because this is obviously going to be making it super hard. Like right now it has reflect elemental damage. I literally cannot do that one, so I'm going to re-roll this one with a chaos orb. If you get any mods that you can't do, we got another reflect. Okay, so monsters always ignite, and there's chill ground, and they have physical damage reduction, but it's okay because we do elemental damage. So it's going to have increased HP, and it's going to make it a little bit harder. If it's your first time, probably don't make the map harder. But what we're going to do is we're going to put the divine vessel inside of our map device and then hit activate. And then we're going to fight the boss. We can also use our hydrosphere and tornado, which is like an optional thing. If you want to add to your build, you can go ahead and do so. But we killed the boss, and so I'm done with this area. I mean, if you want to clean it up, you can definitely do it. Usually you want to try to clear it up so there's less than 50 monsters remaining. But after we're done, we're going to take this item over here, and we now have the soul. And what we can do is we can just right click on it. You used to have to take it to sin, but they've updated it. And now we can never be frozen anymore. 100% chance to avoid being frozen. So if you want to know where to capture these souls from the bosses, and you need a divine vessel every single time you do it, ideally you just do every single one of these. You get the increased stun and block recovery, you get the reduced effective chill, because they're just free extra stats on your character. But the being frozen one is very important. There's also a bunch of other ones making it so you can't be blind or maimed. I like this one a lot, where it reduces the effect of shock on you. Shock can get you killed. There's also another one over here where you have less duration of ignite. Ignite can be pretty nasty as well if you don't have a bunch of leech, but I have leech in the build. I mean, that's, if you're copying the build, you'll have leech as well. But yeah, I really like having the reduced effective shock, because that can actually get you killed, and it stops you from being maimed, which hinders your mobility. But yeah, being immune to frozen is really good, and there's multiple of these that you can capture. But like, let's say I wanted to get the capture Peruna the Challenger. I would just go to like Google and type in capture Peruna the Challenger. Okay, so I just Google that, and then it would tell me what map it's on. So you can see that it's on the Atoll map. Then I would go to the Path of Exile trade website, or if I have the Atoll map, and I would just type in Atoll map, and then I would be able to go ahead and purchase it from another player, and it'll be like 1 chaos, and then I can get that thing done. So ideally you'd get all of these done, and it's basically the same thing. Let's go over the flasks. So I just finished purchasing 5 new flasks. So what I wanted to search for in the trade site is specifically getting flasks that had removal of curses. That's actually a very important thing that you actually want. So it doesn't matter which flask you get that has this. Like, you can get it on several of the different ones. You just can't get it on one of the unique flasks that we'll go over. But to explain what you want is effect of curses. You want reduced effects of curses on you during effect. You want to get 2 of these, and they both need to add up to specifically giving you 100% reduced effective curses. So you can get a Jade Flask, you can get, there's lots of different flasks that you can get. It doesn't have to be Jade Flask, but there's tons of other flasks that you can get. But you want it on, it doesn't matter which one, but you want it on this one. It cannot roll it. So you can get it on, you see I have it on my Quicksilver Flask, and I have it on my Granite Flask. So in total, we will have 100% reduced effective curses on us. So I want to try to pick up specifically a Quicksilver, a Granite, a Silver, a Jade Flask, and then Etsu's Promise is going to give us more damage. Now, I'm not going to run anything to heal my character with. So the reason why I do it this way is because I want all of these to be automatic. You can't have a life flask be automatic, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to our crafting bench over here. And if you need to put your crafting bench in, you just go to edit, and then you add whatever piece of gear that you need. The crafting bench is another item that you add to your own hideout. But what we're going to do is we're going to put in when charges reach full. Now, where do you get this? Use when charges reach full. Because you get the crafting recipe from, let's see, Reach full. Okay, so you get this by... It's on the epilogue of Oriath, so you can't miss this. Okay, so you just get it from, I guess, Helena. But anyways, so you get this one guaranteed. So we're going to be crafting this one over here. It says, use when charges reach full. It requires you to have Glass Blower's Bauble 5, and you also need 5 in ceilings for each one. And this is going to make it so my character does not have to push the button on the flask. As soon as it reaches full, it's going to automatically cast it. Now, these aren't perfect. These are ones that I purchased for like anywhere from 2 to 5 chaos is how much I paid for these. So it adds up, but you also need to get these, and you also need to get these. You're going to need 25 because it's 5 on every single one. And I'm going to put it on all of them. Later, I'll get much better ones where it's going to be more numbers, but basically I just want these now so my fingers don't have to push these buttons, and it's just going to automatically use them. So I'm going to put that one on. I'm going to put that one on, and it does not matter the order now, because as soon as it reaches full, it will automatically activate all of these. Now the downside is that if there's a corrupted blood, I don't have the ability to remove it, but I eventually will get a mod on a jewel, and I can put that on my build, and I could socket it in, and I'm actually working on that right now. And I would get a jewel that has corrupted blood immunity, and I would just put it in, and then I wouldn't have to worry about activating my flask to remove the corrupted blood. Now, as far as ignite and other things, yeah, it can get kind of nasty, but at the end of the day, I like playing it this way. It's up to you. You could run 1 life flask if you want to, but series will give you some heals, so it's not as bad. But that's how I like to play with my flask, and it's up to you, and I highly recommend it, because this means when I go into my map, we can just throw this one in real quick. It's going to activate my flask. I'm not going to push any of them. It's just going to activate it automatically for me, which I think is a huge improvement. You can still activate them yourself. Like, I might activate my movement speed one in the very beginning, but after that, I mean, I just shoot and it just activates all of them. It's going to have all the buffs up as soon as they reach full. So, yeah, it's fantastic. It's one of my favorite things in the entire game. So you don't have to activate your flasks anymore. You can see I'm just zooming. But yeah, that's what I like to do for my flasks. So eventually we will come up to someone that's named the Envoy. You talk to him, do the map. At the very end, there will be a boss, and Maven will witness you fight the boss. When you kill them, they will drop this green item called the Maven's Beacon. So once we put the orb, that quest item, in here, we can enable Maven to witness a bunch of these battles. Now, some of these will make it harder. You see it says Maven progress 1 out of 3. So what I'm supposed to do is defeat tier 6 or higher, tier 6 plus map bosses while the Maven is present in order to receive her invitation. So I'm going to do this, and she's going to witness these fights very soon. Okay. So now we have that. She needs to witness one more. There we go. Now we have the invitation. So once we get the invitation, we're gonna pop it in here. There's so many like things. Okay, so now we have the invitation. We're gonna put this in here, and then we have to defeat the Maven's little summons here. It's really not that difficult in the very beginning. It will get way harder later though. And eventually we can actually fight the Maven. It's one of the most difficult fights in the entire game. But most of these are like the absolute cakewalk for this, but I mean, look at this. But these will get harder as you progress, for sure.
My mana is gone.
And he's gone. There we go. Oh. Okay, and then you will also get more Atlas points. And there's a bunch of stuff that drops on the ground. But that is the Maven mechanic, and you're going to have to do this a bunch of different times. Eventually, you can fight them if you want to. You can see all of the different invitations that you can get. There's several, and it is part of the progression in terms of doing your favorite maps, which is kind of a progression in the end game. But Maven is another mechanic that if you want to engage in that, you can. Eventually, there's going to be some other things that we can engage with, but that's like a brief summary of Maven. And the last thing I want to go ahead and mention, which is actually very important, is I will include this. Instead of showing you guys my tree, I'm just going to be using this website called PoE.ninja. It's a very fantastic website if you want to know kind of like what builds are the best builds in the entire game in terms of DPS and the, you know, what skills that are people using, what items are actually going for in terms of like the price points. It'll tell you, it's got like this whole graph of like, you know, in the past couple days which items are going up and down in price, which is really nice. But we're using this for the build here. So this was the stuff that I was using in majority of the gameplay, and we obviously will want to do the lab, but the third lab you can just go ahead and do it. The fourth one, you're going to need to get something called the Offering to the Goddess, which we'll go over in the next part so you can do your final lab. You can actually do your final lab now if you want. It kind of just depends on what you want to do first, how lucky you get with your pieces of gear, but it'll just show you exactly kind of the things that I have on my pieces of gear. Just in case I was kind of too fast, you can mouse over these things on your own leisure. It also has the entire skill tree. If you click this link to the tree, it'll actually go bring up the Path of Exile website, and you can actually see where the points are actually distributed, which is kind of cool as well. But yeah, this website is excellent, kind of explains all of the different masteries. It shows the items and what exactly I have in every single piece of my gear. Keep in mind, later we're going to be getting a lot of other things. It's just sometimes in Path of Exile, with any content creator, you don't have to copy their build exactly. And the reason why is because I saw a really good deal. This was super cheap, and so I decided to go and pick this up. Later, we're going to get something called Heat Shiver. We're going to swap to Ice Shot, and we're going to still use Lightning Arrow, but we're only going to be using Lightning Arrow to activate the big amount of shock effect that the enemy is going to have, so we can deal a lot more damage. Whereas the Cold will actually be basically multiplied in damage with this helmet called Heat Shiver once the target is frozen. There's a lot more to talk about, which we will resume when we go ahead and talk about swapping over to crit, which will be partially in the next one. But keep in mind, if you're happy with Lightning Arrow, stick with Lightning Arrow, but if you want to convert into Ice Shot and go crit, you're going to get a lot more damage. But again, it's kind of up to you what you want to do. But that's going to wrap up. This is part 2 of our endgame guide for the Deadeye Ascendancy. But keep in mind, you don't have to get to every single piece of gear. We just went over how to do the flasks, and I didn't even have the upgraded flasks during the gameplay, but it's just so I can prepare you guys for the upcoming things in the game. So a lot of these endgame videos will kind of be just like, this is how you do this is how you do this, versus a full walkthrough, because in terms of the maps, I don't know which map that you're going to get. It's kind of random on which one drops. Heck, the map might not drop. But another thing is in terms of the Atlas passive, this is kind of what I've got going on right now. I mentioned I really like getting shrines. I actually really like getting all of the maps. So getting all of these small map nodes, being able to consistently have the ability to keep on doing maps is really key for a very a good beginner guide, and I will highly recommend every single player to do this. Me and myself going forward, I'm going to be doing this strategy every single time. It was actually a strategy that I've seen by a lot of other content creators who are talking about it, and I usually get a few of these, but like they were like, let's go 100%, and it was a really good idea, and I think going forward I'm going to go 100%. Usually I'll get like 50%, and then I will just path into shrines because I really like it, but it makes it so these other big nodes, they basically do nothing. So there is a give and a take, and you can do what you want to in terms of your strategy. But I think in the very beginning, getting all of the maps completed first, like getting at least like 100, because getting some of these other maps, they're unique maps, it can be a little bit challenging, depending on how much some of these maps are worth, especially in the very few first days of the league. But eventually, we are going to spec into shrines. We can get this thing called the goal if we want to, and we can mess around with some of the newer mechanics that got added onto the Atlas passive. There's one for Expedition which explodes everything, so you don't even have to bother reading. And reading is one thing I feel like that I don't like doing in Path of Exile when it comes to certain map mechanics. And it's all up to you. The beauty with Path of Exile is kind of create your own endgame experience. What do you want to do? Do you like doing the little essence things? You can spec into essences earlier on, or do you prefer doing strong boxes? Do you prefer doing this sort of content? There's so many different things that you can choose in Path of Exile. But anyways, let's go ahead and wrap it up for this part of the video, so this video is not super long. But thanks for watching. Drop a like on your way out, and I'll see you guys in part 3 of the endgame, which we will do the final lab, and then we're going to be doing a little bit more swapping to crit, because crit is generally going to be better for most cases, because, well, crit is just amazing in like every action RPG. Anyways, that's going to wrap things up. Catch you guys in the next one.